My perfect teen daughter ran away from home. I spent years searching for her, and what I found, years later, still haunts me to this day. My sweet little Lynn used to be the type of girl to hide behind my leg when boys waved hello and blush at cartoon kisses. It was around her freshman year of high school when I first noticed a slight change in her behavior. She started to wear more makeup and fewer clothes. When confronted about it, she would always get very angry with me, shouting about how it's her body and she can do what she wants. Another grand excuse was, "But everyone else is doing it, Mom." This was really hard for me to watch because I was seeing my precious sweet little daughter trying to turn into what she thought was a real woman. I always tried to explain to her that makeup and wearing fewer clothes doesn't have to mean doing what everyone else is doing, and that she should take pride in what she wants to be. Regardless, she wouldn't budge. And I'm a big believer in more relaxed parenting, so at the time, I thought maybe it would just be a phase. But our relationship slowly got worse and worse. Debates became arguments, and arguments became fights. She started bringing guys over, and while I didn't get a good look at all of them, I saw some who looked twice her age. Then one day I snapped. I was going through her room while she was at school to try and find something I knew she had taken. While searching the nightstand, I found a tiny white baggie tucked behind the lamp. I had my fair share of college days, so I knew exactly what that little baggie entailed. I had a huge confrontation with her when she got home from school. She eventually started to yell at me, and I returned the favor. It got so bad that the next morning, when I checked on her to see if she had left for school, she had vanished. 2 suitcases from my closet had gone missing. I called the police immediately. How could my sweet Lynn do this? Run away from me, the person who loves her most in the whole world. I searched the whole neighborhood, driving for hours around our small town. We found nothing, and neither did the police. After around 4 years of no contact, one of my daughter's friends' moms shared a concerning post with me on Instagram. It looked like a video of my daughter in a news report. At first, I didn't understand why she would be on the news, but then I saw the headline, "SX workers uproar in the south side of town." I couldn't believe it. There was no way my daughter had really gone down that rough path. The more I examined her in the clip, the more she looked out of her mind. Tears started instantly flowing from my eyes. Here I was, sitting in my bedroom, watching my daughter's life spiral out of control, and there was nothing I could do about it. The video was from Los Angeles, California, and I lived in a small town in Texas. After a few days of living with this news, I decided that it was only right to go and look for my daughter. I booked the next available flight to Los Angeles and made my way there in less than a couple of days. The next few weeks consisted of me getting in my rental car and searching all over the south side of town, just like the news report had said. I would pick a street, drive all the way down until it seemed to end, go over a block, and repeat. I knew the chances of me seeing her were slim, but I had no other choice at that point. I knew the police were really no help, so I didn't bother contacting them. One day, a miracle happened. I was driving down a desolate, rundown neighborhood when I saw what looked like my daughter's distinct features. I got closer, rolled down my window, and shouted her name. "Lynn!" She turned around instantly, and there she was, my beautiful baby girl. I got out of my car and ran to her. To my surprise, she started running toward me. "Mom! Mom!" she cried. We hugged each other like we never had before, tears rolling down each of our faces. It was truly a moment I'll never forget. She got into my car, and after about 10 minutes of hugging and crying, I took her to get food and sit down to talk. She still looked drugged out, and I could tell she was hurting. We were eating. I thought we would have a good conversation, catching up on things. Instead, she sat there with a dull look on her face the whole time, not really showing any emotion. I didn't know if this was the substances talking, but it really spooked me. I got her to talk a little near the end of dinner, but after we finished, I got into my car expecting her to follow. She didn't. She just stood there, staring at me. I asked her what she was doing. Didn't she want to come back with me and have a fresh start? She came closer and told me something that will haunt me for ages. I can't come, or they will find me and hurt me. That's where I drew the red line. I knew I had to get the police involved. I insisted on her coming with me, but she said they were watching and had already warned her without me noticing while we were eating. I told her to stay where she was and not to move as I called the police. While the phone was ringing, I noticed that she seemed to be looking off in the distance. She looked at something, then quickly turned back to me. She hugged me one last time and said, "I'm sorry, but I love you, Mom." Then she ran. She ran faster than I ever could. After that moment, I felt like I was drowning in my own sorrow. I now knew my daughter was in trouble, and I couldn't even protect her when she was right there in my possession. I felt like a failure as a mother, a failure as a protector, and a failure as a human. Seeing my own daughter's life spiral out of control has made me fall into my own pit of despair. I couldn't go back to Texas, not without Lynn. The thought of returning to our home, explaining to my family that I'd found Lynn only to lose her again, was unbearable. After Lynn ran, I sat frozen in my car, replaying everything and wondering where I'd failed. Calling the police led nowhere, and I couldn't face going home to her empty room. So I bounced between motels, drifting through unfamiliar streets and handing out flyers to anyone who'd listen. Nights were filled with regret. Maybe if I'd said "I love you" more and "I'm disappointed" less. Most days I just tried to keep moving, hoping every shelter worker's promise to call meant something. But the city made it easy to lose faith. Still, every morning I forced myself up and out because no matter how much hope faded, I wasn't ready to give up on my daughter. I started on Figueroa, posting flyers at bus stops and laundromats, working my way south. People moved around me in waves, some on their way to work, some already starting to drink. I'd catch eyes now and then, but mostly people didn't look. The ones who did seemed to know. Another missing girl, another desperate mother. I wondered how many faces they'd seen on these poles before. At a corner where a group of kids huddled around a broken shopping cart, I handed out a few flyers. One girl, barely 16 by my guess, with chipped nail polish and a glittering stud in her nose, looked at Lynn's photo for a long time. "She don't run with us," she said finally, shrugging, but I noticed the way her mouth twisted when she said it. She slipped the flyer into her jacket pocket anyway. Each day I added new stops. A soup kitchen on 7th, a drop-in center with battered couches and a sign-in sheet, a grimy park where men played cards for change. I learned to expect nothing and to see everything. Some people muttered prayers for me. Others avoided my eyes, afraid my grief was catching. At one shelter, a tired-looking social worker with a clipboard called me ma'am and let me use their phone. She scrolled through a database of missing teens, clicking through names with cold efficiency. "We see a lot of runaways," she said, her voice flat but not unkind. "Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't." I wrote down addresses, phone numbers, dates, trying to piece together a trail. Every so often, a glimmer of hope. Someone thought they'd seen a girl like Lynn at a bus stop or working behind the counter at a donut shop. I'd drive there, heart pounding, scanning every face. Each time, it wasn't her. When the city grew too loud, I'd find myself staring at the sidewalk, reading the faded chalk lines and wishing for something to lead me forward. Sometimes I'd sit in the car and just breathe, letting the world move around me. I couldn't afford to break down. Not now. I started recognizing faces. The security guard who watched me tape flyers on the 7-Eleven window, the old woman with the shopping cart who camped by the freeway ramp. There was a strange comfort in their routine, a reminder that life moved on, even for those stuck in place. But I was moving too. Every block, every flyer, every "have you seen her?" kept the hope alive, no matter how faint it got. I told myself, as long as I kept searching, Lynn was still out there, still possible, still mine. I put off calling home as long as I could. It was easier to pretend Texas didn't exist. No house, no sun, no bills piling up in the mailbox. As long as I kept moving, I could tell myself I was still being a mother, still fighting for Lynn. But eventually the guilt built up so thick I couldn't breathe through it. I bought a calling card at the gas station. My cell phone was nearly dead again, and the last time I'd used it for a long-distance call, it cut out halfway through Joshua's sentence. This time, I wanted no excuses. The phone rang 3 times before my son answered. His voice was lower than I remembered, older, hardened, carrying something sharp I'd never heard in it before. "Deborah," he said, not Mom. The word dropped like a stone in my chest. "Hi, honey. I just wanted to check in," I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. He was quiet. "Are you still in California?" I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. "Yes, I'm still looking." Another long pause. "It's been almost 2 months, you know that?" Grandma's worried. Dad called. He said if you don't check in with work, you're going to lose your job. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Joshua, I have to find her. I can't just leave. You left us." His voice cracked, just a little. "You left me." That stung worse than any insult. I tried to swallow it down. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I need to keep trying. She's out there. I know she is. I saw her room today," he said, softening for just a moment. "It still smells like her. Sometimes I go in there and I just wish you'd come home, Mom, even if you can't bring her with you." His words pressed on every sore spot in me. Guilt, shame, and longing tangled in my chest. "I can't yet," I whispered, "but I promise I'm not giving up. Not on you, not on her." Joshua exhaled, all the weight of a teenage boy holding up the world. "Just call us, okay? Grandma says she prays for you both every night. Even Dad does." We said goodbye, neither of us willing to say I love you first. When I hung up, I stared at the motel ceiling for a long time, trying not to let the tears come. I felt like a ghost, haunting 2 worlds but belonging to neither. But I couldn't stop. If I did, Lynn's face would vanish from these streets, and I wasn't ready to let her become just another lost girl. It was at a makeshift soup kitchen, a folding table set up in an abandoned church lot, where I met Linda. She looked out of place, just like I did. Jeans a little too clean, hair pulled back tight, clutching a stack of flyers with shaking hands. The volunteers took one look at us, and maybe out of pity, poured our coffee extra hot. We stood off to the side, 2 islands in a sea of hard luck. She nodded at my stack of flyers. "Yours missing too?" I held up Lynn's picture. 4 years now. I saw her a few days ago, but she ran. Linda gave me a sad smile and showed me her own flyer. "My son, Toby. He left home last year. Haven't seen him since Easter." It felt strange, talking to someone who understood the language of missing. With Linda, I didn't have to explain why my hands shook, or why I watched every teenage face that passed. She told me about calling hospitals, pestering police, sleeping in her car outside shelters. "I've started to memorize the intake schedules," she admitted, rubbing her eyes. "They're always full. They never know anything." We walked the streets together that afternoon, handing out flyers and trading stories. Linda about her quiet house in Bakersfield, her angry ex-husband, the birthdays that passed with empty chairs at the table. I told her about Joshua, about the guilt that ate at me when I called home, about the way my own mother had stopped asking when I'd be back. It was easier to walk with someone else. We looked out for each other, taking turns talking to people who might have news. At one point, Linda reached for my hand as a fight broke out in the street, both of us ducking into a doorway until it calmed down. We laughed, breathless, shaken, and for a second, it almost felt normal. 2 mothers on a strange kind of errand. That night, we ate cheap tacos in her car and talked about the lives we used to have. Linda told me she'd started writing letters to Toby. Just in case, I write them, seal them up, and keep them in my glove box. I admitted I'd started doing the same for Lynn. We traded addresses, promised to call if either of us got news. "Maybe our kids ran off together," Linda joked, forcing a smile that nearly broke my heart. Before we parted, Linda pressed her hand over mine. "Don't give up, Deborah, even if you feel like you already have." I promised her I wouldn't, and for the first time in weeks, I almost believed myself. Nights in LA left too much room for memory. Sometimes I'd lie awake on the brittle motel sheets, the sound of sirens and distant arguments leaking through the window, and my mind would travel backward, faster than I could stop it. I remembered the first time I told Lynn about the divorce. She was 11, sitting on the swing in our Tucson backyard, the Arizona sun a blinding white over her hair. I'd practiced what to say, but it came out all wrong. "Your dad and we can't live together anymore, but we both love you. That never changes." She stared straight ahead, her hands tightening on the chains. "I know what it means," she said quietly. "It means Dad doesn't love you anymore." I wanted to argue, to untangle the truth, but what good would that do? The damage was already done, and kids see through lies sharper than any adult. The move to Oregon was supposed to be a new start. 4 girls and a tired mother, stuffed in a station wagon, driving north with everything we owned. I tried to make it an adventure, picked out songs for the road, planned picnics along the way, but grief hung over every mile. The girls fought more than they laughed. Lynn grew quiet and sharp around the edges, always watching me like she was waiting for me to disappear too. By the time she hit high school, I was already losing her. She changed her hair, changed her friends, stayed out late with excuses I didn't dare challenge. I told myself it was normal, that she was finding herself, but every slammed door felt like another crack in our family. Sometimes, after the younger girls went to sleep, I'd stand in the hallway and listen for Lynn's breathing, proof that she was still there, still safe. I made mistakes. I know that now. I let my anger show too often. I tried to reason with her like she was still a child, even when she'd outgrown that a long time ago. Some nights I think about every harsh word, every time I chose work or exhaustion over listening. Regret is a language I speak fluently now. Here, in the city where she vanished, the past doesn't let go. I replay the old arguments, the times I looked right at my daughter and didn't see what she needed. Maybe if I'd loved her differently, if I'd paid more attention, she'd be safe in a warm bed instead of lost in the dark. I can't change any of it. All I can do is keep searching, hoping it's not too late to find her and to find forgiveness for both of us. I used to believe in the system. Maybe not completely, but enough to think that if something terrible happened, someone in a uniform would help. In Los Angeles, that belief shriveled fast. The first time I went to the police station, I wore my cleanest shirt and tried to keep my voice steady. I waited an hour just to be seen, sitting on a plastic chair under harsh fluorescent lights. The room smelled of sweat, cheap coffee, and tired hope. When my turn came, the officer barely looked at me. "Runaway?" he asked, scribbling without looking up. "My daughter. She's been gone for years, but I saw her. I know she's here. She's in trouble." He raised an eyebrow, flipping through a battered folder. "How old is she now?" 18, just turned. The look he gave me was worse than a slap. "That makes her an adult. She can make her own decisions, ma'am." I tried to argue, voice rising. "She's not safe. She's being exploited. I know it. Please, He cut me off. "Unless she's a danger to herself or someone else, there's not much we can do." He handed me a pamphlet about missing persons, and that was that. The shelters were no better. There were forms to fill out, waiting lists for runaways, rules about curfews and proof of residence. One social worker, a woman with kind eyes and tired hands, did her best to soften the blow. "We're full every night," she said, "but if she checks in, we'll call you." She promised, but I could tell she didn't expect it to happen. Sometimes I'd show up with Lynn's photo and get nothing but blank stares, like I was asking for a miracle no one had to spare. Other times, a flash of recognition, someone might have seen her, or maybe it was just another girl with the same look in her eyes. eyes. False hope became a kind of torture. Once I sat through a support group for parents of missing kids. We were supposed to take turns sharing, but all I could do was listen. Stories so much like mine, voices breaking, some clinging to hope, others already hollowed out by loss. I watched the clock, thinking of all the hours I'd wasted waiting for someone else to find my child. Some nights I called the hotline numbers just to hear a stranger's voice, to feel less alone. Most of the time, I hung up before anyone answered. I started to wonder if the world was built to break mothers like me, if every door was meant to slam shut until I stopped asking for help, but I didn't stop. Every rejection made me angrier, more stubborn. If the system wouldn't save Lynn, I'd have to do it myself. I didn't know how, but I knew I couldn't count on anyone else. So I hit the streets harder, holding tighter to hope, letting the city's indifference turn to fuel. Maybe it wasn't much, but it was all I had left. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I got the call. I was in the back booth of a donut shop, staring at the last cold sips of coffee, when my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. For a split second, I thought it might be Lynn. Instead, it was Eddie, the outreach worker. Deborah, I think we got something. One of our girls saw someone matching your daughter's description near the bus depot on 6th. Blue jacket, long hair, said she looked sick, was with a group. If you hurry, you might catch her. Hope struck me like lightning. I left a crumpled dollar on the counter and ran, my heart thudding so hard it hurt. My hands shook so badly I fumbled my keys twice. The city blurred past in streaks of gray and sun. All the way to the depot I prayed, please let it be her. Let me be fast enough. The bus depot was chaos. Lines of people, security guards, pigeons picking at dropped food. I pushed through the crowd, holding Lynn's photo in the air, asking everyone I passed, did you see a girl in a blue jacket? Long brown hair? Please, she's sick. She needs help. A young man nodded toward a row of benches. She was here, like 5 minutes ago. Left with some others, went down that alley. I ran. My legs burned, lungs raw as I followed the alleyway behind the depot. The stink of urine and trash nearly choked me, but I kept going, eyes darting to every figure hunched in the shadows. Then I saw her. At least I thought it was her. A girl in a blue jacket, head down, surrounded by 3 others. Her walk was off, her steps dragging. Lynn, I shouted, my voice cracking, desperate and wild. She looked up. For a heartbeat, I was sure it was her. Those same haunted eyes, that familiar slouch. But as I drew closer, the girl shrank away, fear flashing across her face. It wasn't Lynn, just another runaway, another lost child wearing my daughter's pain. One of the others glared at me, stepping between us. Get out of here, lady. Don't you know these streets eat people like you? I stumbled back, humiliation and heartbreak twisting inside me. For a moment, I just stood there, dizzy and lost, the city whirling on without me. The hope I'd felt was already dissolving into self-loathing. I'd let myself believe just for a second that it was possible. My daughter, found at last. Instead, I was left with empty hands and the echo of her name on my tongue. I walked back to my car slowly, each step heavier than the last. The sun was setting by the time I collapsed behind the wheel, tears streaking my cheeks. I pressed Lynn's photo to my heart and whispered, I'm still here. I'll keep looking. I promise. But in that moment, even my promises felt thin, like breath on glass, already fading in the dark. The streets changed after sunset. Even the shadows felt different, longer, hungrier, hiding secrets I didn't want to learn. Still, I couldn't sleep. Each night, I convinced myself that the next hour, the next corner, would be the one that brought Lynn back to me. I grew reckless. Sometimes I'd park and walk alleys alone, clutching my phone and a can of pepper spray I bought at a gas station. I told myself I was being brave, but deep down, I knew it was something closer to desperation. One night, as I was taping a flyer to a lamppost behind a row of boarded up shops, I heard footsteps behind me, quick, sharp, too close. I spun around and came face to face with a young man, no older than 20, eyes darting, breath ragged. What are you doing out here? He demanded, voice rough and low. I tried to keep my fear out of my voice. I'm just looking for someone. My daughter. She's missing. He glanced at the flyer. You got any money? I shook my head, but he stepped closer anyway. Lady, you shouldn't be out here. He reached for my purse, quick as a snake. I tried to back away, but he grabbed my arm, yanking hard enough to make me stumble. Before I could shout, a second figure appeared. A woman, thin as a wisp, face hidden by a dirty scarf. She shouted something in a language I didn't know, and the young man let go, spitting on the ground. You're lucky, he muttered, stalking off into the dark. I stood there shaking, too stunned to cry. The woman approached, eyes narrowed. Stupid to walk alone, she said, voice soft but fierce. This place, it'll eat you. Go home. I can't, I whispered. Not without her. She looked at me a long time, then nodded, as if she understood. She pressed something into my hand, a tiny flashlight, cheap but sturdy. Next time, keep your eyes open. Watch the shadows. I thanked her, the words sticking in my throat. When she disappeared into the night, I realized I was clutching Lynn's photo so hard it had wrinkled. My knees buckled and I sat on the curb, breath ragged, shaking in the cold. I wanted to give up. I wanted to call Joshua, beg him to come get me, but pride wouldn't let me. I wiped my face, steadied my breath, and forced myself to stand. I was still alive. I could still search. But for the first time, I understood just how fragile I'd become, how close I was to losing myself as well as Lynn. That night, back at the motel, I locked the door and slept in my clothes, flashlight clutched in my hand. The city kept on humming outside, but I dreamt of home, of Lynn as a little girl, safe in her bed, her small hand curled around mine. When I woke, I knew the city hadn't beaten me yet, but it was getting close. It was nearly dawn when the motel phone rang, a shrill, unnatural sound that yanked me out of uneasy sleep. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but the phone kept ringing. I lunged for it, heart in my throat. Hello? A woman's voice crackled through, official, but hurried. This is County General. We have a Jane Doe who matches the description on a flyer brought in last night. We need you to come down and confirm. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Is she okay? She's alive. She's in rough shape. Please come as soon as you can. I was out the door in minutes, forgetting everything except the directions the nurse had given me. The city was gray and empty, the streets washed clean by a rare bit of rain. I prayed out loud, promising anything if I could just have my daughter back. At the hospital, everything moved at half speed. The nurse at the desk eyed my clothes and hollow face, then silently led me down a long hallway that smelled of antiseptic and old fear. She paused outside a curtained bay. Prepare yourself. She's been through a lot. I took a shaky breath and stepped inside. On the bed was a girl, thin, bruised, hair dark and tangled, oxygen tubing under her nose. She looked so small. My chest clenched. I forced myself to step closer, whispering, Lynn? The girl turned her head, blinking up at me with blank, unfamiliar eyes. It wasn't Lynn. My knees almost buckled, but I held onto the edge of the bed to keep from falling. The girl stared at me, searching my face for something I couldn't give. I fumbled for words. I'm sorry. I thought you were my daughter. She nodded, eyes filling with tears. My mom doesn't know where I am either. For a moment, we just sat in the silence, two strangers lost in different kinds of pain. I squeezed her hand because it was all I could offer. Back in the hallway, the nurse tried to comfort me, but her words slid past. You're not the first, she said softly. Sometimes I think every mother in LA is searching for someone. I left the hospital numb, my hope drained and heavy in my bones. On the sidewalk outside, the sun was rising over the city, throwing gold over the cracked concrete concrete. I stared at it, willing myself to feel something, anything besides loss. But all I could do was keep walking, one foot in front of the other, day after day, hoping that next time the call would be for Lynn, and that this time it wouldn't be too late. When the streets grew too loud and the world felt hopeless, I wrote letters to Lynn. Not emails, not texts, old-fashioned letters on motel stationery or the backs of diner receipts. I never mailed them. I just needed to talk to her, even if she'd never read a word. I wrote the first one after the hospital, hunched over the little desk by the window as the city's night noises bled through the glass. Dear Lynn, I saw a girl in the hospital today. For a moment, I thought she was you. I wanted it so badly I almost convinced myself, but it wasn't you. I'm still here. I'm still searching. I'll always be searching. I wrote about Texas, about the way Joshua's voice has changed, how your grandma asks about you every Sunday after church, how your old room smells like dust and lost time. I wrote about all the little things I remembered, how you hated ketchup on your fries, how you snuck your baby sister cookies after bedtime, how you used to sing yourself to sleep when you thought no one was listening. I'm sorry for every time I yelled, for every time I let my fear turn to anger. I wish I'd listened more. I wish I'd told you you were enough, even when you were lost. I don't care what you've done or where you've been. I just want you home. Sometimes my letters were angry. Why did you run, Lynn? Why did you leave me to chase after shadows? Didn't you know I'd follow you anywhere? Didn't you care that I'd lose everything for a chance to hold you again? But mostly, they were love letters. A mother's promise written out in ink, the kind that stains your hands and never quite washes off. I still keep your photo in my wallet. Sometimes I talk to it. Maybe that means I'm losing my mind. Or maybe it means I'm still your mom, even out here, even now. On the loneliest nights, I'd tuck the letters beneath my pillow, as if words could stand in for the daughter I couldn't find. I told myself that someday, if I was lucky, I'd put these in her hands, and she'd understand. She'd forgive me, and maybe I'd forgive myself too. But until then, the letters piled up, silent witnesses to my hope, my grief, my love. And I kept writing, because as long as I was writing, Lynn was still out there. As long as I wrote, there was still a chance. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through old photos on my phone. Birthdays in Texas, Joshua grinning in his Little League cap, Lynn blowing out candles, the whole family squeezed together on the couch. It felt like another lifetime, another version of myself. Every few weeks, I forced myself to call home. I knew they worried, even if they never said it straight out. Joshua answered on the third ring this time, his voice flat, half asleep. Mom? Hi, honey. Did I wake you? It's fine. He didn't ask where I was. He already knew. How's school? I asked. As if homework or grades mattered right now, he hesitated. It's okay, I guess. Grandma's still making meatloaf on Sundays. She leaves a plate for you, you know, like you're gonna walk through the door. I closed my eyes, picturing the old kitchen, the chipped tile, the sound of forks scraping plates. Tell her I miss her. I miss you both, he sighed. You could just come home. I bit my lip. Not yet, sweetheart. I have to find her. I know. His voice was tired, brittle around the edges. But I need you too, Mom. It's like I lost both of you. I wanted to explain, to make him understand the terror that kept me in LA, the promise I couldn't break, but the words stuck, guilt pressed down, a physical ache in my chest. I'm sorry, Joshua. I really am. I'll call again soon, okay? We hung up, nothing resolved, and I sat for a long time with the phone warm in my hand, staring at the motel ceiling. I remembered the last time we were all together, Lynn and Joshua fighting over the TV remote, my mother laughing as if we'd always be whole. I wondered what they told people at church, what story they spun for neighbors who asked why I'd vanished, why I chased after a daughter who didn't want to be found. Did they blame me? Did they wish I'd given up? I was haunted by the feeling that every mile I stayed away, I lost a piece of home. But if I left, I'd lose Lynn for good, and maybe lose myself too. In the silence, I pulled out the stack of letters I kept for Lynn, pressing them flat with my palm. For a moment, I wished I could write one to Joshua, explain what it meant to love two children at once and feel like you were failing them both. Instead, I just sat there, missing a life that no longer existed, praying that one day, somehow, I could bring us all back home. The day I ran into Linda again, the city was blanketed by an early morning fog that made everything feel distant and muffled. We found each other in the line at the soup kitchen, our shoulders hunched against the damp. I could see the strain in her face even before she spoke. She looked thinner, her eyes red-rimmed. They found Toby, she whispered, voice hollow. I felt my stomach drop. Where? She shook her head. A drainage canal, out past Alhambra. They think he was there for weeks. They said he must have been alone. There was nothing to say. I reached for her hand, and for a moment, we just stood there, two mothers clutching each other like lifelines. The noise and shuffle of the line faded until all I could hear was Linda's ragged breathing. I thought I'd feel something, relief maybe, to finally know, but it's just empty. Like my whole body turned to glass, and I'm scared to move in case I break. I squeezed her hand tighter. I'm so sorry, Linda. I'm so sorry. She gave a small, bitter laugh. At least now I can stop searching. At least now I can sleep, even if I don't want to dream. The next hour passed in silence. We sat on the curb, eating watery soup and sharing the kind of silence only grief can hold. Linda talked about Toby as a boy, how he loved old monster movies, how he hated peas, how he used to fall asleep on her shoulder in the car. All those small, precious things that meant nothing to the world, but everything to a mother. Later, as we parted, Linda gripped my arms, her eyes fierce despite the tears. Don't stop looking, Deborah. Even if it kills you, I'd do it all over again for one more minute with him. I watched her walk away, shoulders hunched, swallowed by the city, her pain pressed against me, sharp as broken glass. For the rest of the day, I couldn't escape it. The knowledge that this search didn't always end in reunions. Sometimes it ended in silence, in loss, in empty rooms and beds that would never be slept in again. That night, I wrote another letter to Lynn, the words spilling out faster than I could control. Dear Lynn, today I learned what it means to lose hope completely. I wish I could put you in a bubble, safe from this world, from every danger, every mistake, but I can't. All I can do is keep searching, keep loving you, even if you never come back. I pressed the letter under my pillow and lay awake long into the night, haunted by Linda's story, praying mine would end differently. It happened on a Thursday, almost 6 months to the day since I'd first seen Lynn on the street. The city was choking on spring heat, and I was down to my last flyer, the edges ragged from too many hands. Eddie, the outreach worker, called just after noon. Deborah, I think you need to come to St. Cecilia's shelter. There's a girl here asking for you. My heart beat so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Is it her? He hesitated. You should come. I drove like a woman possessed, not caring about red lights or honking horns. My hands gripped the wheel so tight they cramped. Outside the shelter, sunlight glared off cracked windows, and my legs threatened to buckle as I pushed open the door. The lobby was noisy, filled with the shuffle of tired bodies and the smell of stale coffee. At the far end, huddled on a plastic chair, sat a girl with hair hanging limp over her face, a blue jacket 2 sizes too big wrapped tight around her shoulders. Lynn? My voice barely rose above a whisper, afraid to shatter the moment. She looked up, and for an instant, time collapsed. Her eyes were sunken, her face gaunt and bruised, but it was her, my Lynn, my baby, impossibly alive. She stood, shaky on her feet. For a second, we both hesitated, afraid the dream might break. Then she stumbled into my arms, and I caught her, holding on like like I could anchor her to the earth. We both started crying, all words lost. I felt the sharpness of her shoulder blades, the way she flinched at my touch. Her hands were ice cold, her breath shallow against my neck. For a long time, we didn't say anything. I just rocked her, whispering her name over and over. Lynn, Lynn, my Lynn. Finally, she pulled away, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Her voice was raw and small. I don't know where else to go, Mom. My throat closed with gratitude and grief. You did the right thing. You're safe now. Eddie appeared in the doorway, giving us a nod. You've both got a room for the night. We'll get her checked out by the nurse. I thanked him, tears still streaking my cheeks. When we were alone, I took Lynn's hands in mine, memorizing every line and scar. We're going to get through this. We'll find a way. Lynn only nodded, her gaze drifting to the window, already distant. I wanted to wrap her in my arms, take her home, erase everything that had happened. But as I studied her, I realized the road back would be long and winding, if it existed at all. That night, I slept in a cot beside her bed, holding her hand as she shivered in her sleep. I listened to the rise and fall of her breath, terrified it might stop, determined not to let go. For the first time in a long time, hope and fear sat side by side in my heart. I had my daughter back, if only for a moment, and I would do anything to keep her safe. The nurse checked Lynn's vitals and left us alone in the tiny fluorescent lit room. Outside, the city's noise was a distant hum, but in that moment, the world shrank down to just the two of us. I poured water into a paper cup and handed it to her. Lynn's hands trembled so badly she spilled a little, but she managed to sip. I studied her, really studied her, for the first time in years. Her cheeks were hollow, lips cracked, new scars tracing her wrists and the inside of her arms. There was a hardness in her eyes I'd never seen before. She looked both older and impossibly young. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she cleared her throat. I'm sorry, Mom. My breath caught. You don't have to say that. You don't have to. I do. Her voice was rough. I'm sorry for running, for everything, but I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I left, maybe things would get better. Or maybe I just wanted to disappear. I tried to reach for her hand, but she flinched, so I kept my hand on the blanket, close, but not touching. I made mistakes too, Lynn. I should have listened. I should have tried harder to understand. Her eyes filled with tears. It was never about you, Mom. Not really. I was just lost. After the divorce, I felt like I didn't matter anymore, like nobody could see me. The people out there, they saw me. At least they pretended to. She looked away, her jaw tightening. But it's not what you think. It's not a family. It's a prison. I tried to leave, but there's always someone watching. Always someone waiting to pull you back in. Drugs make it easier, but only for a little while. My heart broke for her. Let me help, please. We can go home or anywhere you want. You don't have to be alone. She shook her head, wiping her face. I can't, Mom. If I leave now, they'll find me. They'll hurt you. I don't want you mixed up in this. I felt a helpless rage, a desire to tear the whole world apart to keep her safe. You're my daughter. I'd do anything for you. Anything. Lynn let out a shuddering breath. You don't understand. There's no way out. Not really. You can't save me. Nobody can. I wanted to argue, to promise her the impossible, but I saw the defeat in her eyes, the deep, bone-tired hopelessness. Instead, I leaned closer, voice trembling. I love you. I always have. That's never going to change, no matter what. A ghost of a smile flickered across her face. I know, Mom. I love you too. I never stopped. We sat together in silence, broken but still tethered by love. Outside, a siren wailed, distant and cold. That night, after she fell asleep, I wrote another letter. Dear Lynn, tonight I saw you for who you are. Scared, strong, wounded, and still my little girl. I wish I could take your pain and carry it for you. I wish I could build a world where nothing could ever hurt you again. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll never stop trying. I put the letter with the others and lay beside her in the dark, listening to her breathing, trying to hold the moment as tightly as I could. By morning, Lynn looked worse, eyes rimmed with red, hands shaking so badly she struggled to eat the toast the nurse brought. I sat beside her, watching her try to swallow. Every bite looked like a battle she was losing. The shelter gave us 2 nights, then Lynn would have to move on. I tried to talk her into staying longer, checking into a rehab or going to the hospital. You need help, I pleaded. We can go anywhere you want, just let me take you somewhere safe. Lynn shook her head. It won't work, Mom. They know where I am. If I leave with you, they'll come after us. They'll hurt you to get to me. I thought about calling the police, but after all those fruitless nights begging for help, I knew what would happen. They'd take her statement, tell her she could leave if she wanted, then drop her right back on the street. The system had never been built for girls like her. Still, I tried. I called every number the nurse gave me. Detox centers, women's shelters, halfway houses. Every place had a wait list, or didn't take girls with active warrants, or said she had to show up clean. One woman offered a spot in a rehab 2 hours north, but we had to get there on our own, and Lynn needed to stay sober for the intake. I looked at Lynn, sweating, pale, eyes darting, and knew it was impossible. Maybe you could just come home to Texas, I whispered, voice thick. We could start over, just for a little while. She smiled, soft and sad. I wish I could, Mom. I really do, but I'm tired. I just want to sleep. That night, I barricaded our shelter room door with a chair. I dozed in the cot, one hand on her blanket, listening for footsteps in the hallway, afraid every sound was someone coming to take her away again. Early in the morning, I found her in the bathroom, hunched over the sink, shivering. I don't feel good, she whispered. Everything hurts. I wrapped her in a blanket, my arms barely able to steady her. We rode to the clinic in a donated van. The nurse checked her vitals, took her temperature, murmured words I didn't understand. After a while, they let us stay, but only for the day. They had no beds left. Lynn rested her head on my lap as we waited in the clinic's crowded lobby, surrounded by people coughing and crying and begging for medicine. I stroked her hair, humming the lullaby I used to sing when she was small, her eyes closed, her breathing uneven. Let this save her, I prayed. Let this be enough. But in the end, there was nowhere left to go. The system's doors closed in our faces, and the city's shadows grew longer. When night fell, we were back on the street, nowhere safe left to run. I held her close, my heart cracking with every step, and tried not to wonder if this was what the end looked like. The last night came without warning, like a door shutting softly in the dark. We found a bench near the edge of MacArthur Park, far from the glow of streetlights and the endless roar of traffic. Lynn was exhausted, her head resting on my shoulder, hands trembling in her lap. I pulled the blanket tighter around her, willing my warmth to seep into her bones. We talked quietly, afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled between us. She told me stories of girls she'd met, some still alive, some lost to the streets, all of them searching for something they couldn't name. She asked about home, about Joshua and her sisters, about the little things, if the orange cat still slept on the porch, if her room still smelled like vanilla lotion. I told her everything I could, painting pictures of Texas sunsets and Sunday dinners, trying to bring the world she'd lost a little closer. I told her how much we missed her, how Joshua still left her favorite cereal on the shelf in case she came back. After a long silence, Lynn looked up at me. Her eyes were glassy, tired. I'm sorry I hurt you, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't be better. I hugged her, holding her as tightly as I dared. You don't have to be better. You just have to be here. She smiled, a flicker of the old Lynn. I'm tired, Mom. I don't know if I can keep doing this. My heart broke, but I forced myself to nod. Whatever you need, I'm here. I'll stay as long as you want. We watched the city lights flicker, listening to the distant music and laughter. the world going on as if nothing had changed. She rested her head on my lap, and I stroked her hair, humming the lullaby she loved as a child. I wished I could bottle that moment, keep her safe and close forever. When she fell asleep, I stayed awake, afraid to let go, afraid of what the next morning would bring. Just before dawn, she stirred, eyes bleary. I love you, Mom. Don't forget, okay? I kissed her forehead, tears slipping down my face. I'll never forget. I love you more than anything. As the sun rose, painting the sky in bruised orange and gold, she squeezed my hand one last time, then drifted back to sleep. I watched her chest rise and fall, counting each breath, holding on for as long as I could. I didn't know it then, but that was our goodbye. Days bled into each other after that last night. Lynn disappeared from the shelter as quietly as she'd arrived. I spent 2 days combing the parks, the soup kitchens, the bus stations, everywhere I could think of. Each time I asked, "Have you seen her?" people just shook their heads or looked away. On the third morning, the phone in my motel room rang. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. I answered on the second ring, the world narrowing to the hum of the line and the dread in my chest. "Is this Deborah?" The voice was official, brittle, already sorry. "Yes, this is Officer Marquez with the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm so sorry, ma'am. We found a young woman who matches your daughter's description. She was brought into County General last night. There was an overdose. She didn't make it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The world spun, and I clutched the phone so tightly I thought it might crack in my hand. No," I whispered, the word too small for the pain. "No, you're wrong. She just called. The officer's voice softened, but it didn't matter. We'll need you to come down to identify her. I'm so sorry." I hung up without another word. My body moved on its own, stumbling to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face as if I could wake myself from this nightmare. The mirror reflected a stranger's grief, eyes swollen, skin ashen, mouth twisted in disbelief. I sat on the bed, holding the last letter I wrote to Lynn, the ink still smudged from my tears. I read it over and over, begging the words to mean something more, something that could bring her back. The hours that followed were a blur, signing forms, identifying her small, lifeless body, calling Joshua and my mother, listening to their cries on the other end of the line. There was nothing left to do but survive the moment. The world outside continued. Cars honked, the sun rose and set, people went to work and came home. But my world had ended. Everything I had fought for, hoped for, died with my daughter in that sterile hospital room. In the quiet, I clung to her memory, the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her arms, the echo of her last words. "I love you, Mom. Don't forget, okay?" I couldn't, but I didn't know how to live in a world without her. The flight home was a blur, a hollow shell of a woman clutching a worn backpack, numb to the world as she crossed 3 states back to Texas. Joshua met me at the airport, his face older and harder than I remembered. He didn't say a word. He just hugged me, so tightly it hurt, and for the first time since Lynn died, I let myself cry. The days before the funeral passed in a fog. My mother made the calls, Joshua helped pick out a simple dress, and the neighbors dropped off casseroles we couldn't eat. I wandered the house, touching every surface, every memory. Lynn's room was untouched, her pillow still holding the faint scent of her favorite lotion. I sat on her bed, surrounded by relics of her childhood, trophies, crumpled drawings, a journal half filled with slanted handwriting. On the day of the funeral, the church was filled with faces I barely recognized. People from every corner of our old life came, teachers, neighbors, women from church, old friends who hadn't seen us in years. Some came out of pity, others out of a desire to help, but most came for the same reason I did, to say goodbye to the girl we'd all lost in different ways. The pastor read from the Psalms, his voice a gentle current trying to soothe a sea of grief. Joshua stood beside me, stoic, his jaw clenched. My mother wept openly, a handkerchief pressed to her lips. I felt adrift, separate from my own body. The world narrowed to the plain wooden casket at the front of the church. People spoke. Stories of Lynn as a child, of her smile, her stubbornness, her kindness. Some remembered her in ways I'd forgotten, volunteering at the animal shelter, standing up for her younger sisters, singing in the church choir before everything fell apart. When it was my turn, I walked to the front with shaking hands. The words I'd written were simple. My daughter was not just her choices. She was a light in our lives, a girl who made mistakes, who got lost, who loved fiercely, and was loved just as fiercely in return. I will never stop loving her. She was mine, even when she ran, even when she broke my heart. I would do it all again if I could hold her just one more time. After the service, we gathered at the cemetery. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers, and the sun glinted off the headstones. As they lowered Lynn's casket, I pressed one of my unsent letters into her hands, tucking it beneath the folds of her dress. "Goodbye, sweetheart," I whispered, the words dissolving in the breeze. "I will always love you. Always." As the earth closed over her, I realized I would never have the answers I wanted, never know the moment when hope truly died, never understand all the ways I failed and all the ways I did my best. Grief, I learned, is a shapeshifter. It follows you home, sits beside you at the dinner table, whispers in your dreams. But in the silence that followed, surrounded by the people who loved her, I felt something else, a fragile thread of gratitude for every moment I'd had, every memory, every ounce of love we shared. I couldn't save Lynn, but I could remember her. I could carry her forward in the only way I knew how. A week after the funeral, as I was sorting through Lynn's old things, I found an envelope tucked in the back of her dresser drawer. The handwriting was unmistakable, her slanted, looping script, the way she always dotted her I's with little circles. On the front, in faded blue ink, it said simply, "For Mom." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were 3 letters, each written on the same lined paper she used for school essays. The first was dated a few months after she'd run away. "Dear Mom, I know you're looking for me. I can feel it, even here. Sometimes I see women on the street with flyers, and I think about running to them, asking if they know you, but I'm scared. I don't know how to come home. I'm sorry for all the ways I hurt you. I hope you're okay. Love, Lynn." The second was shorter, written during what must have been one of her darker days. "Some nights I dream I'm back in my old room. I can hear you humming, smell dinner on the stove. I wish I'd listened more. I wish I'd stayed. I know I've made it impossible for you to forgive me, but I love you. I always have." The last letter was dated only weeks before she died. The paper was tear-stained, the ink smeared. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Please don't blame yourself. None of this was your fault. You were the best mom you could be. I was just lost, and I couldn't find my way back. I hope you remember the good parts, the way we used to laugh, the road trips, the way you held me when I was sick. I want you to live, I want you to forgive yourself, and I want you to remember I was always your daughter, and you were always my home." I pressed the letters to my chest, sobbing in the quiet of her empty room. For a long time, I let myself grieve, not just for the daughter I'd lost, but for the love that remained, stubborn and shining, even after everything. Later, I placed the letters in a small wooden box, along with the ones I'd written to her, a conversation between a mother and daughter, spanning years and distance and all the words that were never said out loud. That night, for the first time since Lynn died, I dreamed of her, not as she was at the end, but as the child who used to run through the yard, laughing, her hair tangled by the wind. When I woke, the grief was still there, but so was something else, a small, persistent hope, a reminder that love, even when battered and broken, never never truly dies. Grief doesn't fade, it transforms.